Socorro in the spring of 1964 was a small mining and ranching town in central New Mexico. A few thousand people, a courthouse square, a police force small enough that most officers knew most residents by name. It sat inside a region already thick with government hardware, White Sands Missile Range to the southeast, the Very Large Array's predecessor testing grounds nearby, Holloman Air Force Base not far off. Rockets, weather balloons, and experimental aircraft were not exotic ideas here. They were Tuesday, that matters, because the man at the center of this story was not someone inclined toward exotic explanations. He was the opposite. Lonnie Zamora had been a Socorro police officer for roughly 5 years by that April afternoon. Before that, he'd worked as a mechanic and volunteer fireman in the same small town. He was a churchgoer, married in his late 30s, with a reputation, even among the investigators who later grilled him for details, for being steady rather than excitable. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it's the reason this case ended up on federal desks in Washington instead of dying as local gossip. A person's testimony carries weight not because of who they are, but because of what can be checked against it, their track record, their behavior under questioning, whether their story changes. Zamora's didn't. Investigators from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Air Force interviewed him separately, on different days, asking him to walk through the sequence again and again. Hector Quintanilla, the man running Project Blue Book at the time, the Air Force's UFO Investigation Office, later wrote, in terms he rarely used for any other witness, that there was no question about Zamora's reliability, and that he was a serious officer who understood aircraft. That single fact, that the Air Force's own chief investigator publicly vouched for the witness even while failing to identify what the witness saw, is a large part of why this case still gets discussed 60 years later. It began as nothing. At around 5:45 in the evening, Zamora was on patrol in his white 1964 Pontiac when he spotted a black Chevrolet moving fast through town, heading south past the courthouse. He gave chase, routine police work, the kind he'd done 100 times. Then somewhere along Old Rodeo Street, everything about the afternoon changed. He heard a roar. To the southwest, low over the mesa, he saw a flame, bluish, tinged with orange, narrow at the top and wider at the bottom, like a funnel standing on its point. It wasn't moving the way an explosion moves. It was descending almost lazily. His first thought wasn't extraterrestrial, it was procedural. There was a dynamite shack out in that direction, used for storing blast. If it had gone up, that would explain the flame, and it would mean people might be in danger. So he broke off the chase, let the speeder go, and turned the patrol car toward the flame instead. This decision deserves attention because it tells you something about the next 20 minutes. Zamora wasn't hunting for a mystery. He was doing the job he was paid to do, checking on a possible emergency. The road toward the flame was rough gravel, climbing a short, steep grade. His tires lost traction twice. He had to back down and try again. By the time he crested the hill, the roar and the flame were both gone, and he'd lost roughly 10 or 15 seconds of visual contact with whatever had produced them. What he saw next, from about 200 yards away, was an object down in a gully off the road, smooth-sided, without visible windows or doors, colored a dull, whitish aluminum rather than a polished chrome. His very first read on it, he later said, was that it looked like a car flipped onto its end, standing up the way a vehicle might after a rollover. That reflexive interpretation, car, not craft, is important because it shaped his next move. He also noticed two people near it, dressed in what he described as white coveralls, close to the object's base. One of them appeared to notice him and react with a startled, quick movement, as though caught off guard. He caught only a couple of seconds of this before he lost his sight line again, while maneuvering the car, radioing dispatch that he might be looking at a traffic accident, and starting toward the gully to help. This is the part of the case that has generated the most speculation over the decades, and it deserves the most restraint. Here is what actually exists in the record. Zamora saw two figures, at a distance, for a matter of seconds, partially obscured by terrain, and by his own attention being split between driving and radioing his location. He described them as appearing roughly human in size and proportion, not unusually small, not unusually large, dressed in something like white coveralls. He did not report faces, features, headgear, or any detail beyond general shape. He explicitly told investigators he couldn't say much more than that because the sighting was too brief. No horns, no oversized heads, no glowing eyes. None of that appears anywhere in the primary documentation, and it's worth saying plainly. Those details, when they show up in later retellings of this case, are invention, not evidence. What Zamora reported was closer to something far stranger in its own way. Two ordinary-looking people, in plain white coveralls, standing next to an object he could not identify, in the middle of an empty stretch of desert, a mile from town. By the time he parked his car and started walking toward the gully, the figures were gone. He got out of the patrol car. His radio microphone slipped from his hand. He reached back to secure it. And in that brief pause, he heard 2 or 3 loud thumps, the kind of sound a heavy door makes when it's shut hard, spaced barely a second apart. Then the roar started. Not gradually, it built fast, rising in pitch and volume until it was, in his words, unlike any aircraft noise he knew, and he knew what jets sounded like. At the same moment, he saw the blue and orange flame again, this time underneath the object itself, which had begun rising slowly. He thought it was going to explode. That single, human, entirely reasonable assumption is what put him on the ground and running. He turned and ran north, putting his patrol car between himself and the object, glancing back over his shoulder as he went. His sunglasses fell off. He didn't stop for them. Roughly 6 seconds after the object started to lift, it had already risen 20 to 25 feet, about level with the roof of his own car. He kept running, dropped down below the edge of a low ridge to take cover, and, braced for an explosion that never came, realized the roar had simply stopped. In its place was a short, descending whine, high to low, lasting about a second. Then nothing, complete silence. When he lifted his head, the object was already moving away from him to the southwest, level, fast, and now completely silent, without flame, without smoke. It cleared a small dynamite storage shack near the site by only a few feet, continued in a straight line, and shrank into the distance until it disappeared over a low mountain range roughly 6 miles off, the entire close-range portion of the encounter. From the moment he first saw the object clearly to the moment it vanished over the mountains, lasted, by his own estimate, somewhere around 20 seconds. Zamora radioed his dispatcher, asked him to look outside, and, struggling for a word that would mean something over the radio, said it looked like a balloon. Within the hour, a New Mexico State Police sergeant arrived and found him pale, sweating, visibly shaken. That detail matters because it's independent corroboration, however limited, that whatever happened to Zamora. His physical state afterward wasn't performance. The two men walked down into the gully together. There, investigators eventually documented 4 ground depressions arranged roughly in a rectangle, each about 1.5 feet long, cut into the earth at an angle, roughly 2 inches deep, with soil pushed toward one side, consistent, some investigators noted, with something heavy pressing down at a slant rather than straight on. Scattered among and around these depressions were several patches of scorched, blackened brush, while other clumps of vegetation only a few feet away were untouched. Separately, investigators found a set of smaller circular marks in the sandy ground, each only a few inches across, pressed into the surface so lightly that one report compared the effect to a jar lid gently set into sand. None of this proves what made the marks. What it does establish is that something physical happened at that location. This wasn't only a story told by one man. Ground was disturbed, vegetation was burned, and whatever did it left a pattern rather than random chaos. Within a day, this had stopped being a local matter. An FBI agent who happened to be in Socorro on unrelated business was pulled in almost by accident, ended up at the site that same evening. From a nearby test range, were brought in to examine the burn patterns for chemical residue. And Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation office, dispatched J. Allen Hynek, a Northwestern University astronomer serving as the program's scientific consultant, to interview Zamora directly and inspect the site himself. Hynek's involvement is one of the more significant details in this case, because he was, by professional temperament, a skeptic assigned to explain sightings away, not to validate them. He spent years doing exactly that for hundreds of other reports. Socorro was different. After his personal investigation, Hynek was notably unwilling to dismiss it, later describing it, across multiple public statements over the following years, as one of the small handful of cases in the entire Blue Book archive that genuinely resisted conventional explanation. Blue Book's formal classification, filed under Case 8766, was simple, and for an Air Force program built largely around explaining sightings, unusually blunt. Only a small fraction, a few hundred, ever received that designation. An unresolved case is not the same thing as an unexplainable one, and several serious alternative explanations have been proposed over the decades. Each deserves a fair hearing. The first is a secret test vehicle. Given Socorro's proximity to White Sands and other military and aerospace test ranges, some, including Quintanilla himself after he retired, speculated that Zamora may have witnessed an early prototype connected to the Apollo program's lunar excursion module, the vehicle later used to land astronauts on the moon. Its a tempting fit. LEM-style descent engines did produce a roaring, throttled burn rather than the near-silent hover UFO witnesses often described elsewhere, which matches Zamora's account of the flame and roar. The problem is documentary. No records have ever surfaced showing a LEM test vehicle operating anywhere near Socorro on that date, and Quintanilla, despite years of trying, could never produce supporting evidence for his own theory. The second is a hoax. New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology sits just outside Socorro, and in later years its president, Sterling Colgate, gave interviews suggesting some of his own students may have staged the incident as an elaborate prank, a claim that surfaces in various forms throughout later retellings. Investigators at the time did note a few pieces of possible physical support for this idea, including some charred cardboard found near the site and footprint impressions that didn't obviously match Zamora's boots. But the case for a hoax rests heavily on second-hand recollection rather than a confirmed confession or hard physical proof, and it doesn't cleanly account for why the timing lined up so precisely with Zamora's radio call, or why students would risk detonating pyrotechnics close enough to convincingly fake a rising, roaring object at night in open desert. A third proposal, offered decades later by a British UFO researcher, suggested Zamora may have witnessed an atmospheric mirage of a bright star, distorted by unusual heat conditions near the horizon. This explanation struggles against the most basic fact of the case. Zamora didn't just see lights in the sky. He described a solid object at close range, ground disturbance that outside investigators later measured and photographed, and a scorched, physical patch of desert that other people walked out to see with their own eyes. A mirage does not scorch brush. None of these theories has ever been confirmed. That's not evasion, it's the honest state of the evidence, and it's exactly why Blue Book's own paperwork still reads unidentified rather than pointing to any one of them. There's a distinction worth making clearly, because it's the one this case is most often used to blur in either direction. Unidentified does not mean alien. It means exactly what the word says, that after formal investigation by multiple agencies, no one produced a conventional explanation that fit all the documented facts. That is a narrower, more careful claim than this was extraterrestrial, and it's also a stronger one than nobody really looked into it, because plenty of people did look into it, with federal authority and technical training, and still came up short. The honest version of this story isn't a story about aliens landing in New Mexico. It's a story about the limits of investigation itself, about what happens when a credible witness, real physical evidence, and a genuine federal effort to find an answer still aren't enough to produce one. It's worth separating the layers of this case plainly, because so much of its staying power comes from how rarely people do that. Documented and confirmed, A Socorro police officer radioed his dispatcher in real time before any object could have been identified, reporting a possible accident and then an unidentified object. Federal and military investigators arrived within hours and documented ground depressions, burn patterns, and circular marks. Project Blue Book classified the case unidentified, a rare designation. Reported but resting on Zamora's word alone, the object's exact shape and the red marking he described on its side, the two figures near it, and most of the visual details of its ascent and departure, physically observed by others, independent of Zamora's testimony. The ground disturbance and scorched vegetation at the site, examined and measured by FBI, Army, and Air Force personnel after the fact. Disputed whether the case matches a secret test vehicle, a student hoax, or something outside any of those categories. Investigators and researchers have disagreed on this for 60 years without resolution, speculative and unsupported by the primary record. Any claim about alien biology, alien technology, or government cover-up beyond the routine secrecy of a Cold War-era military test range. None of that appears in the documented case file. It appears. Picture the gully again. Late afternoon light, loose gravel, a patrol car parked at an angle, engine running, radio still open, scorched brush already cooling, 4 depressions in the dirt, precisely spaced, facing no particular direction that means anything to anyone who examines them. A police officer stands at the edge of it, pale, sweating, trying to explain to a state trooper what he just watched happen. He isn't performing shock. He isn't chasing fame. In fact, for the rest of his life, Lonnie Zamora largely avoided interviews and public attention, giving few statements beyond his original account before his death in 2009. He never changed his story. He never monetized it. He never claimed to know what he'd seen, only what he'd watched happen in front of him. That, in the end, may be the most unusual detail in a genuinely unusual case. Not the flame, not the roar. It's the fact that 6 decades of investigation, skepticism, and speculation have never managed to move a single credible witness off his original, careful, unembellished account, and have never managed to fully explain it either.